Welcome to Some Guy's Garage. This feels weird. I've got red tools in the garage. What was I thinking? Really, what was I thinking? And these are the two biggest tool brands out there, arguably. Maybe Makita could fit into the mix, but Dewalt and Milwaukee, it's like cats and dogs, and I'd like to get to the bottom of this. So I went out and purchased two of the more entry-level kits that are as closely comparable as I possibly could find them in red and yellow. So you'll often see these kits for $200-ish, at least up here in Canada, maybe a little cheaper down in the US. But these are your typical Black Friday, Christmas, holiday special kits. So in this case, they both come with hammer drills, both come with impact drivers, both come with 2 amp hour batteries, and the bags and chargers that go along with it. So as close as I could find that have the same components included in the kits. And these aren't the top end drivers. So obviously both Dewalt and Milwaukee have higher end, newer versions of all of these sort of tools, but these are typically where people start off. These are the deals that you pick up for the first time when you're buying tools, and I wanted to check out maybe the more entry-level style tools that most of the people out there will actually use. And eventually I can probably do some comparisons, at least on the Dewalt side, to their higher end stuff to see just how far the gap is between these two. So the kits I picked up, we have the DCK226 D2 kit. The D2 means it comes with a couple batteries, and this has the DCD799 drill and the DCF809 impact driver. The Milwaukee kit is the 3610-22CT. It comes with some hammer drill and some impact driver, but doesn't actually say on the outside of the packaging what variants or models, so we'll take a look at that once we open it up. But before we do that, just a couple looks at maybe some of the specs, the top trumps of each one of these sort of things. They are both brushless, so you can see brushless, brushless. They're both compact, compact, compact. They both have 2 amp hour batteries. This one, you can see two 2 amp hour batteries here. And then in terms of specs on them, they both have their own little charts to say, hey, I've got this much more torque here, or this much power. So we'll kind of run down those as best I can here. They don't have exactly the same ones. We'll turn these up on end here. So looking at the drill first, so these are the kind of the drill specs on either side. This says 550 inch-pounds. The Dewalt doesn't mention inch-pounds, but it does say 404 unit watts out, whatever that sort of means. RPM though, they do both state, so the Milwaukee has a top speed of 1700 RPM, the Dewalt only has 1650. They both are 2-speed though, so you can see two different speed ranges there. In terms of BPM, so with the hammer drill section, how many times it hits per minute. So the Milwaukee is 25,500, the Dewalt is 28,050. So a little faster hits on this, but this one has a little bit more RPM. I guess we'll see what that all ends up being. They both are 1/2 inch chuck, as expected. In terms of tool length, interestingly enough, the Dewalt on the front here, if we look here, says our shortest hammer drill. Sadly, it is 6.49 inches long and the Milwaukee is 5.8 inches. So even though this is their shortest, Milwaukee's still even shorter. We'll see how that actually plays out. We'll take some measurements once we open this up as well. And then the other thing they both advertise is tool weight. Unfortunately, Milwaukee does it with the battery and Dewalt does it without a battery. So this says 2.53 pounds and this says 3.2 pounds for the drill. But that's with battery here. So we'll actually take real measurements of these to see what they actually are. And then on the impact driver side, they're both 1/4 inch hex chucks as expected. They are both 1700 inch-pounds, so the same torque rating. But the impacts per minute, looking here at the impacts per minute, this one's 4,900, which is actually quite high. I think that's higher than any of the ones that Dewalt has out right now, even the DCF845. I'm not too sure about the 860 or 870 though. But that's pretty high, whereas the Dewalt is only 3,200 impacts per minute. And the Dewalt does not list RPM, the Milwaukee does at 3,600. And again, Milwaukee winning on tool length here, 4.4 inches versus 5.1 inches. And once again, weight with and without batteries. So this is 2.7 with a battery, this is 2.1 without. We'll check that out for real once we get these open. So specs-wise, they actually end up being fairly similar, although on the face of it, the Milwaukee looks a little bit better, has a little bit more power, a little bit more speed in most of the categories. So, and they're a little smaller. So we'll see how that actually plays out. But without further ado, let's get these open and check them out. All right, opening up. We'll start with the Dewalt. We've seen a lot of these on the channel, so I kind of know what to expect here. This will be the Dewalt tool inside a bag with all the stuff kind of wrapped up in plastic. Yep, so there's our wonderful tool bag. Typical Dewalt tool bag as expected. Opening that up, We've got a charger in here. This is the DCD799, so the 2 amp charger. Decent charger. I prefer the 115, which is the 4 amp. I think the 1104 is the new model of the 4 amp, but still a decent charger that comes with it. It's not one of the tiny ones. Those will also do 12 volt batteries and even the 60 volt batteries. I have another video on chargers, so make sure you check that out at some time. We got our typical literature, can throw that to the side. And then inside we've got our batteries. So there are 2 batteries here, and these are fairly fresh, 2024-09. But these are the typical 2 amp hour Dewalt batteries. Just taking a look at both of these. These look to be the newer style. Grabbed one of the older styles just for comparison. I've had this for a while. This is a 2015 battery, still works. So the difference is you'll notice they are slightly wider. I guess we can get that at the right angle there. You can see the new ones are slightly wider than the older 2 amp hour packs, and the battery indicators stay on when you push the button, whereas these ones, they turn off as soon as you let go. So they just stay on for a minute and then go off. So it does have the newer battery packs in it, which is nice to see. Again, if you haven't seen my video on Dewalt batteries, I have one on the chargers and one on the batteries. Check that out. It explains all the different batteries that Dewalt makes, other than the new tabless ones. So those are just a new design of the cylindrical cells that are just even a little bit better than the previous versions. Continuing on though, inside we have the couple tools here. So we have the impact driver here, typical Dewalt impact driver, and we have the drill. So again, a typical Dewalt drill. And comes, of course, with the little belt clip. I would imagine, yep, there are 2 of them in there, so 1 for each tool. I rarely use these. I have probably dozens of them kicking around that just never get attached to the tools, but does come with those. So that's what's included in the Dewalt kit. We'll throw that to the side here and take a look at the Milwaukee. This will be the first time I've ever opened up a Milwaukee kit, so it's going to be interesting to see how they package it. It's a lot bigger of a box than the Dewalt one was. So what are they doing here that takes up so much more room? But let's get this thing opened up here. Right. So inside, again, they're packing it inside the tool bag. We'll flip that over. So nice tool bag here. Throw that to the side. So you do get a nice larger tool bag than the Dewalt one. It's interesting enough, probably just more of a height thing. But inside here, we have, again, the typical literature. Throw that to the side, and who needs that? A little nicer packaged here. So we have a charger. This is a 3 amp charger, it says, M12 or M18, so similar idea. That's a 2 amp, this is a 3 amp. Should charge a little faster for the 2 amp hour cells, which is kind of nice, but it is a physically larger charger, mostly because the 12s and the 18 volts have different connection styles. So, got a charger, have a couple batteries here. So, pulling out one of the batteries. So that's the 2 amp hour battery. These are the red lithium ones, which I think is just their kind of standard fare, similar to the Dewalt. It's not one of their more advanced designs that they have now. So we get a couple batteries. And looks like the reason we have more packaging is there's some cardboard in here separating all the tools. We'll get that out of the way. And down below that, we have the tools. So there is the impact driver. It comes with the belt clip pre-attached, but that is what that looks like. More cardboard to get out of the way here. So maybe there's something to be said here if you care about the environment, that the Dewalt is packaged with a little less stuff in the mix. And then we have the drill as well, again with the belt clip attached. So that's everything that comes in the Milwaukee kit. So there we go, all laid out. As you can see, very similar in both kits. You get 2 batteries, 2 tools, chargers, and bags. But let's walk through each one of the tools, just kind of take a look at the features of each, initial impressions before we do a little bit of testing to compare how these perform against each other. So starting with the Dewalt hammer drill here, we'll attach a battery there. Sits on end very nicely. Typical forward, reverse on the side of the trigger here. So reverse, forward, and you can pull. There is a light on the bottom that lights up once you pull the trigger. No controls on that like some of the other Dewalt drills that you do get nowadays that will have a way to control the light, but does stay on for a little bit after the trigger pull. On the top you have your gearbox, so speed 1 and speed 2, and your clutch settings as well. So you've got Basically, hammer drill is this first setting, regular drilling without any torque limits, and then all the clutch settings, so the 15 different clutch settings that you can adjust there. It's worth noting it's a plastic chuck, which is typical on this kind of price point of drill, so you aren't going to get the metal chuck here, but feels fairly well made anyway. And then the typical 1/2-inch size for the chuck itself. So relatively straightforward, typical Dewalt offering. Moving on to the impact driver from Dewalt. Again, fairly basic tool here. Forward and reverse switches on the side with a lockout and neutral. Lights are on the front of this one, so you get 3 LEDs around the outside, but no other settings on this tool. So again, with Dewalt, some of their higher end tools will have settings either here at the top or on the base to control the amount of torque or different behaviors of the drill. So this does not have that as well. Pretty typical again at this price point not to see that. But that is the impact driver from Dewalt. Looking at the drill from Milwaukee here, so we'll slide that on the battery as well. You can see my first habit goes to pressing the button here because that's where it is on the Dewalt, but they're on the sides here for the Milwaukee. So we'll slide that in. So there we go. On the Milwaukee, again, it's a forward and reverse on either side and lockout in the middle. So that's that. Again, gearbox on the top, so first and second speeds there on the top. And then again, we have the hammer setting here at the very beginning. So hammer, drill, and then all the way around here for only 12 clutch settings on the Milwaukee. A few less settings, but typically that doesn't play in too much. But we'll see how the actual clutch works on these drills in a little bit. In this case, it is a metal chuck, so this is not plastic like the Dewalt, which is a nice thing to see, but still accepts 1/2-inch bits, so same size there, just a metal chuck rather than a plastic chuck, so that's a nice upgrade on the Milwaukee. And then finally, the impact driver from Milwaukee. Plug that one in as well. Forward and reverse on either side, locks out the trigger, pulls. And then again, no other controls or stuff on this. Single light here, unlike the Dewalt's 3 lights. So not quite as good illumination as the Dewalt impact driver has, but the drills are relatively similar with just LEDs down at the bottom. So yeah, pretty simple impact driver with the quick release 1/4-inch chuck, just like the Dewalt. And I guess just one other thing, the batteries, the charge indicator, the Milwaukee has a 4-level charge indicator. You can see these are pretty well dead. I'm gonna have to charge them before we do any testing, but press the button, shows for a little bit, and then eventually goes out. So typical 2 amp-hour battery. And similarly on the Dewalt, this one has a 3-segment indicator, but press the button, shows the charge level. So these come a little more charged, which is actually probably a good thing. They say with tool batteries, 50% charge is about the right kind of storage voltage. If these ones are down a little more, that might not be ideal. Again, very comparable between the two. 2-speed drills with the clutch chucks, metal but plastic, which is interesting. Both have LEDs. In this case, a little bit better LEDs on the Dewalt, but otherwise no other features on the impact drivers. And then just taking a look at size, we'll start with the drills here side by side. Get those out of the way here, maybe flip them around. So you can see the Milwaukee is indeed a bit shorter. So lengthwise, it's just over 5 3/4, whereas the Dewalt is just around 6 3/4. So basically the Milwaukee is nearly an inch shorter. And from a height perspective, they're about the same. Width as well, the Milwaukee seems to be a little bit narrower here. Just putting a measuring tape across the back, it's about 2 1/4 inches, whereas the Dewalt is about 2 1/2. So a little bit narrower as well in the Milwaukee. So in pretty much every dimension, the Milwaukee drill is smaller. And then looking at the impact drivers here, got them lined up again. The Milwaukee is again shorter than the Dewalt and ever so slightly not quite as tall. So lengthwise, we're looking at just under 4 1/2 compared to about 5 1/4 here. So the Dewalt is a chunkier driver. And similarly in the other dimension too, you can really see it here. The Milwaukee is only a little over 2 1/4 wide, whereas the Dewalt is nearly 2 1/2. So from a dimensions perspective, the Milwaukees are definitely a lot more compact. But then what about weight? Let's have a look at how much the weight differences are here. We'll start with the, we'll set this down here and get this turned on and zeroed. We'll start with the tools as a whole, so with batteries installed, and then we'll measure the parts separately just so you can see the differences there. Starting with the Milwaukee impact driver, it is 1,216 grams. compared to the Dewalt, which is 1,336 7 grams. So again, Milwaukee's even lighter, smaller. I guess that makes sense, right? If it's smaller, it should be lighter, but a smaller and lighter tool there on the Milwaukee side. And taking a look at the drills, the Milwaukee drill is 1,482 grams compared to the Dewalt, which is actually, oh, okay, let's make sure that was a good measurement. 1,519 grams, so just a little bit heavier than Milwaukee, a little closer on those ones, less than say 50 grams between them. And then let's grab a battery here and see where that lines up. So of the battery weight, on the Milwaukee side, the 2 amp hour battery is 426 grams. And on the Dewalt side here is 365 grams. So the Dewalt battery is a bit lighter. I did notice though, the Milwaukee has rubber coating on the bottom, so it doesn't slip or slide around, whereas the Dewalt does. And that might be what accounts for some of the weight anyway. And it's kind of a nice feature. I actually like that it doesn't slide around as much as the Dewalt does. It'll stay put a little better. And then looking at the tools themselves, so the Dewalt impact driver is 969 grams compared to the Milwaukee impact driver being 789 grams. And then moving on to the drills, pulling that off, the Milwaukee drill is 1,053 grams. And the Dewalt drill is 1,155 grams. So about 100 gram difference between those as well. So at least in that perspective, the Milwaukee kind of won hands down in all of those categories. They are smaller, they are lighter than both the Dewalt offerings. But next up, I'm gonna have to charge these batteries, and we'll be back here in a moment to do some testing to see how they perform. All right, we're back. Batteries are fully charged, so we're all the way up on all of the batteries. And so I have the 2 new Milwaukee, the 2 new Dewalt, and I also grabbed a couple of the other Dewalt tools I have just as a comparison point. So just a reminder on model numbers, this is the 3650-20 impact driver. This is the 3602-20 hammer drill. This is the DCF809 impact driver. This is the DCD799 hammer drill. And then we have the DCF845, so this is one of the higher end Dewalt impacts. I know the DCF860 just came out, but don't have that one yet. But this was my old top dog impact from around a year ago. And then we have the DCD800, which is still one of the better current drills. Not a hammer drill, but the DCD805 is the hammer drill of this, but one of the better compact drills that Dewalt makes. And similar test setup to previous times, I've got a bunch of 5" by 1/4" lag bolts into a chunk of 6x6, pressure treated 6x6. I have done a small pre-drill, an 1/8" pre-drill down about 2 inches, just the length of a drill bit as a starter, and then finger tight all of these into those holes. Just enough to get them started, but they're all at the same level. And what we'll do is, using a socket adapter, we'll drive each one of these in with the different tools, and we'll be able to see which one has the most power and performance. So we'll start off with the Milwaukee impact. So that's the Milwaukee impact. Now we will do the Milwaukee drill. Almost didn't have the torque to get through, but it just made it through. Next up, the Dewalt impact. Did pretty well. The Dewalt drill. So that happened to be on the hammer setting there when I picked it up. So I'm going to repeat that with the regular drill setting. Let me just get another one set up here. Okay, take 2 with the Dewalt drill, not on hammer setting, just on regular drill setting. So same sort of thing as the Milwaukee with that. At the end, it sounded like the motor was struggling a bit, but relatively comparable. Now the newer Dewalt impact, this is also on a 2 amp hour battery, probably not the one you would normally use with these, But just to keep apples to apples, this is the DCF845 on a 2 amp hour. So that's the 845. And now the DCD800 larger drill. Again on mode 2 and in drill setting. And as we can see, the bigger, more powerful drill made short work of that. So here are all the times on screen. The Dewalt and Milwaukee drills were fairly comparable, with a slight edge to the Milwaukee, though the higher-end DCD800 still ran away with it. That said, the Dewalt DCF809 was much slower than the Milwaukee Impact, with the Milwaukee matching the time of the higher-end DCF845, which is quite impressive actually. Okay, and next test I wanted to do is with the clutches on these, just to see how gentle the drills can be set. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to set the clutches all the way down to their bottom settings. And we will drive just these 3-inch screws into wood here and see where they end up stopping to get a sense of how gentle the different clutches can be. So starting off with the Milwaukee here. Not too far in, which is a good sign. So let's also do that kind of midway up. So going on a setting 6, which is half of the top setting, see how much further it goes. Almost all the way in, just flush with the surface. So fairly good control at the low range of things. Moving on to then the Dewalt. Again on mode 2 and all the way down on the clutch. Very similar stopping point to the Milwaukee. We'll go up to a setting 8, let's say. It goes up to 15, so 8 is around halfway there. Drove just a little bit more flush than the Milwaukee, but similarly good control with the chuck, with the clutch on the chuck, I should say. And then just for completeness sake, we'll do the same on the bigger drill here, the DCD800. Again on mode 1. Well, apparently that one doesn't have much of a clutch at all because it drove the screw almost all the way down. I'm going to try that again here. Just grab a second screw. This is again on setting 1, yep. And we'll just drive another screw here. Apparently setting 1 goes pretty far. Let's see what happens when we crank this thing up. It goes again to 15, so we'll go on setting 8. I'm gonna guess this is just gonna keep driving this screw through the wood here. Yeah, pretty much just drives it through the wood. I guess that goes to show how much more power this has. But also that for more delicate work, these ones, the clutches are a little more useful, having a lower range to more gently drive screws into wood. Or any other sort of driving purpose that you might use these for rather than drilling. Having that control is a good thing comparatively to the more powerful one that seems to not mind wood very much at all. All right, so next test I'd like to do with the hammer drills is drilling concrete. So I have a little chunk of, this is just Quikrete out of the bag that I put into a bin here with a little bolt just for future purposes. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but we can use this to test out some drilling. I've got brand new quarter inch masonry bits in each one of the drills, and I've added a DCD799, which is the old top hammer drill. The 999 and the 1007 are now out, so this is kind of an older model, but just as another point of reference to compare to the Milwaukee and Dewalt hammer drills. Okay, and starting off with the Milwaukee again, mode 2 hammer setting, and I put some marks at 1 inch. We're gonna try going there. Depending on how fast these go, we might stop there, or I might keep going down to the end of the fluting on the drill bit. But let's start here. Yeah, so we will stop there. Not too bad though. So that's the Milwaukee. Hammer setting definitely works. You can see it go really quick at the start and then slow down as it went, but pretty good. Moving on to the Dewalt now. So from feel that felt faster, but we'll see with the times on screen which one actually got there faster. And then finally, the larger DCD996 here. Pretty good. Definitely a smoother experience with that one than the Milwaukee or Dewalt. It helps probably have that extra heft and maybe a little bit more power. But honestly, they all seem to perform pretty well into concrete. So these are 1/4-inch bits, drilling things like Tapcons or whatever. These would work perfectly for a smaller size like that. You're probably not going to want to do larger holes with this style drill. You want to move up to an SDS drill. But for smaller fasteners into concrete, these look like they'll work pretty well. Okay, so final thoughts on the Dewalt and Milwaukee kits here. Honestly, it's a toss-up. I know the fanboys of each side, or fangirls of each side, are going to complain that, oh yeah, ours is definitely better, or theirs is definitely worse, or anything like that. But honestly, in the way they perform today, they're very similar. I'll give props to Milwaukee. They're not my usual brand, so I am typically a Dewalt person, but the Milwaukee stuff is pretty nice. It's more compact, it's a little bit lighter. Performance seems to be very similar, and you do get a metal chuck here, which is a nice touch too. So for my first look at Milwaukee, definitely a nice showing. Dewalt, they feel great. The ergonomics that I'm always used to is always a nice touch. Things are where I expect them to be, and they perform just as well as they always do. So when it comes down to it, which one should you buy? That's probably the question everybody's asking. Honestly, I would say either one is a safe bet. If you like the color red, go Milwaukee. If you like the color yellow, go Dewalt. Or really more practically speaking, the best way to choose between these two types of tools is based on what you're going to do with them and what you need. So Milwaukee does have a bunch of other tools in the M18 style battery packs, just as Dewalt does in the 20 volt packs that they have. And really the offerings there are going to kind of determine which one is the better platform to buy into. If there's a Milwaukee tool, say like a Sawzall, that looks better for what you're going to do, then maybe start with Milwaukee. Whereas if maybe with Dewalt you want a concrete drill or blower down the road, then maybe go with the Dewalt. But given how wide the lineups are for both these brands, it's probably a toss-up between the two. What will really be interesting is if I durability test them. So let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in seeing. Get them wet, get them dirty, try and stall out the motors, things like that, and maybe throw them around a little bit and then see which ones really do hold up. But if that's something you're interested in, then throw it in the comments below and I can see about doing a video like that. Otherwise, that's really all for today. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comments below. If you aren't already subscribed, please consider it. And as always, thanks for watching.